Hey, welcome in. How is everybody? What is today's date? September 29th. It is 6 p.m. Central Time. I am Sheila, Rubber Ramada, Crime Time with Sheila. We're just going to jump into it today. I have had a very long day. I've had mom at the doctor, and y'all know how dementia patients are with going to the doctor. Sometimes it doesn't work out well. So I've had a very, very long day. So with that, I'm going to jump right into the stream. We're going to watch closing arguments for Mississippi versus Jeffrey Spence. And we're going to get right to it today. I'm not going to dilly-dally around. Hector stayed home. There might be a little guitar playing in the background, maybe some zombie killing. Who knows? We'll see. Anyways, with that, let's jump in. And here we go.
Sit for about 40 minutes. We'll have a little, if you need a little break then, you want to leave at that time, you can, then be prepared to sit for about another 45 minutes to an hour. I don't want anybody coming and going when the attorneys are making their closing arguments. So, and then you'll have about another. So don't get up and leave during the closing arguments. And Mr. Bailiff, once they start their closing arguments, don't let everybody come in until they have a break, okay? I don't want to be any eruptions, all right?
Your Honor, I'm missing an exhibit.
I didn't get it. I promise.
36.
36. 36 is, it's been omitted. Safety box, easement and log, Saltville branch. You find it? I knew it was going to be there. Miss Kathy's in charge.
Miss Kathy, what?
You was in charge. I know you had your stuff together. I want to talk. Y'all come up here and approach Thad or Ben or somebody. I'm not rushing anybody, but are you ready? Which is sort of like rushing you.
We're ready. I need to lay my hand on a couple of exhibits.
Let me do this. Let me give you an opportunity between the state's closing and your closing, okay? Jerry's been waiting long enough.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And I'll have these instructions available if you want to use them when you close it, okay? All right, show the jury in if you're ready. believe you got to stand, Mickey, so everybody can see you. If you would, okay. All right. Look like everybody survived the weekend. Good morning, all. Had some good football games. Some turned out the way I wanted, some turned out the way I didn't want anyway. I trust no one had any problems with the court's instructions not to investigate the case, not to discuss the case, not to form or express any opinions about the case. If you've had any problems in that regard, let me know. If not, if you don't let me know, I'm assuming you have. All right. At this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the instructions of law, what the law is. As I told you, if we started this thing, I get to decide what the law is. Y'all decide what the facts are. After I read the law to you, the state will make its opening, closing arguments. And then the defense will make its closing argument. And because the state bears the burden of proof, they'll get the last bite at the apple and have the last closing argument. So pay attention as I read these rules to you. Members of the jury, you have heard the testimony, received the evidence introduced in the course of this trial. The court will presently instruct you as to the rules of law which you will use and apply to this evidence in reaching your verdict. When you took your place in the jury box, you made an oath that you would follow and apply these rules of law to the evidence in reaching your verdict in this case. It is therefore your duty as yours to follow the law which I shall now state to you. On the other hand, it is your exclusive province to determine the facts in this case and to consider and weigh the evidence for that purpose. The authority thus vested in you is not an arbitrary power, but must be exercised with sincere judgment, sound discretion, in accordance with the rules of law stated to you by the court. Both the state of Mississippi and the defendant have the right to expect that you will conscientiously consider and weigh the evidence and apply the law of the case, and that you will reach a just verdict, regardless of what the consequences of such verdict may be. It is your duty to determine the facts and determine them from the evidence produced in open court. You should not be influenced by bias, sympathy, or prejudice. Your verdict should be based on the evidence and not upon speculation, guesswork, or conjecture. You are the sole judges of the facts in this case. Your exclusive province. Bear in mind also that you're those are instructions of law that are to govern the case.
Yeah, we're going to skip these, so just hold on a second. I'm losing some
in
guys.
the jury room. Y'all can consult those when you begin your deliberation. Is the state ready to make its opening, closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you.
Y'all guard the door now. Don't let anybody come and go during this portion of the.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, that's fine. May I proceed? Sure. Thank you. Good morning. The judge has instructed you on the law. As I said in my opening statement, you're the trier of facts. You judge the credibility of all the witnesses that you heard last week. Now, when you go back and retire and go back in the jury room and deliberate, you'll apply the evidence to the law and make your decision. And as the judge has said, you can take the instructions, should take the instructions back into the jury room with you. Now, Mr. Spence is charged with capital murder. We have to prove all the elements of capital murder beyond a reasonable doubt. The first element is that on or about November 30th of 2022 in Tippah County, Mississippi, while Jeff Spence was engaged in the commission of robbery, Jeff Spence unlawfully, with or without deliberate design, killed Kirby Carpenter, a human being. Those are the elements. November 30th of 2022. Kirby's last words to Caitlin were at 6:37 p.m. on November 30th of 2022. He was traveling past Gino's, which is a tire store in Boonville. Kirby is never heard from again. You can review the text messages. They're entered as an exhibit, and you will see that there are no outgoing texts or calls from Kirby's phone. Scott Watson, who was the deputy coroner that day, and Dr. Erin Robinson, who didn't testify, but her report and the death certificate were admitted into evidence, declared that the date of death was November 30th of 2022. We can see this from the death certificate, which is right here, admitted into evidence. And highlighted there is 11/30/2022 in the right-hand corner is the date of death. Tippah County, Mississippi. His body, no question, was found at 6071 County Road 600 in Tippah County. That's Kirby Carpenter's home. Now, let's talk about robbery. Robbery is just what you would think it would be. It's taking someone else's property by violence using a gun in this case. A person is in the commission of robbery even if the robbery occurs after the killing. And the judge read you an instruction that tells you that as long as the state has proved that this is a continuing chain of events, the murder and the robbery, we don't have to prove which one occurred first. So even if Jeff robbed Kirby after killing him, he is still in the commission of a robbery. Now, let's talk about the property. You heard testimony early on in the trial from Bart Adams. Bart Adams is an attorney in Ripley, Mississippi. He knew Kirby for about 12 to 15 years, knew him, did some legal work for him, and he knew him as an acquaintance. He did business with him. He traded gold, silver, and collectible coins with Kirby. He also testified that in his dealings with him, Kirby always carried a satchel. I think Bart called it a man purse. And in that, I'm going to call it satchel. In that satchel was cash and business documents. Now, he also always carried a pistol with him. The gun and the satchel were never recovered. They weren't on Kirby's person, they weren't in Kirby's house, and they weren't in Kirby's truck that was locked in the driveway with the groceries he had purchased at the Kroger in Corinth on 11/30/2022. 22 Magnum shells were found on Kirby's person at the crime scene when the body was discovered on December 2nd of 22, but no gun. Where'd the gun go? Something he always carried. Now, let's talk about the personal property, including the business documents. Where were they found? You got to look to the Chilhowie, Virginia branch of the Bank of America. These pictures have been entered into evidence, and the actual evidence you can take back into the jury room and examine. Now you'll see some, what Mr. Hill calls the commercially packaged items that you can buy on Royal Street in New Orleans, but you also see a lot of loose coins. These are all items that were part of Kirby's business. North Mississippi Gold, Silver, and Coin Exchange. Also contained in the Chilhowie branch were miscellaneous papers. I'll have more to say about that in a little bit. Jeff killed Kirby with or without deliberate design. Deliberate design. Now, what is deliberate design? Deliberate design means we don't have to prove that Jeff Spence intended on killing him. He killed him, but we don't have to prove intent. Jeff Spence shot Kirby in the right shoulder in the chest with a shotgun. Kirby's death was caused by a shotgun blast. Where do we get that information? From the death certificate. And the pictures that you saw that were presented in trial that showed the wounds, Kirby Carpenter's neck and chest area, right shoulder. The doctor, the medical examiner, ruled this a homicide, and the cause of death, which is in the right paragraph, gunshot wound, gunshot to right shoulder and chest area. Now, there's a lot of evidence in this case. We're going to take it one at a time because once you put all the pieces together, everything points to Jeff Spence. The timeline. In my opening argument, I suggested to you that the timeline is critical in this case. Kirby's timeline, Caitlin's timeline, and Jeff Spence's timeline. Again, Kirby's last words to Caitlin, to anyone, was at 6:37 p.m. in the form of a text message when he's passing Geno's. Again, here's the text message. You can see it 6:37 p.m. on November 30th of 2022. Where are you? Geno's. Now, if you recall, Caitlin's testimony was that on the night of, actually on the 29th, Jeff Spence suggested to her that she go out with Bailey Ridge, her friend, on the night of 11/30/2022. That didn't work out because Bailey had her baby, her husband was home, whatever. They did not get together. But Jeff suggested they get together. Yeah, that's just why. Because he did what he had to do. We know where Caitlin was. We know Caitlin was at Walmart in Boonville. And we know she went to the parking lot. And how do we know that? Because we've got video evidence that's been entered into the evidence showing her at the Walmart parking lot, and she stays there until 7:52 p.m. Her testimony was that after she left, after breastfeeding, she went to pick up Chinese food and then headed home. 15 to 20 minutes to Kirby's house, where she lived. So that puts her, even if she's speedy picking up her Chinese food, that puts her home about 8:15 p.m. Kirby was murdered approximately 7 p.m. Now, Jeff and Karen left Mississippi after being in Mississippi for an extended period of time to, quote, help with the baby on 11/29/22, one day before the murder. 19 hours. I want you to remember that number. You heard the officers from Virginia testify that it was about an 8-hour drive. Caitlin said it was 10. Say it was 10. You've got an hour time difference. So when you're traveling to Virginia, you pick up an hour. When you're coming back to Mississippi, you lose an hour. 19 hours. So if the Spences left Mississippi 1 to 2 p.m., giving them a 10-hour drive, adding an hour for the time change, that puts them home in Saltville, Virginia about midnight on 11/29/22. Kirby's killed at 7 o'clock p.m. on the 30th. That's a 19-hour gap. Plenty of time to get something to eat, to take a shower, fill up with gas, get a good night's sleep, and drive all the way back to Mississippi. And again, Kirby was found at 12:30 on December 2nd of 2022. When did the Spences say they come back? They came back on the 3rd, and they stayed for the funeral on the 17th, and then they left on the 20th. 19 hours. The bank box. The first bank box that was opened by Jeff Spence was opened on December 2nd of 2022. Guess what? The same day Kirby's body was found. There's a safe deposit box lease opened by Jeff Spence, co-owner Karen Spence. But what's significant is the box entry log. When does he enter that box? On the same day he opens it. At what time? 11:40. That's Eastern Standard Time, which is 10:40 Mississippi time. That's almost 2 hours before Kirby's body was discovered. If they didn't know he was dead, why they're opening up the bank box? And Mr. Hill made a big deal that, hey, you open up a bank box, nothing unusual about going into that bank box. But if you look at the Saltville branch documents, that box was opened up on December 12th of 2022, and the contents are in evidence. He doesn't enter that box until June of 2023. Why does he go into that box? On the day that he opened it, 2 hours before Kirby's body was discovered. Well, on December 4th of 2023, pursuant search warrants obtained by Virginia law enforcement, what do they find in the Chilhowie branch box? Number 11. This. And more importantly, more incriminating, not commercially valuable, is a check to David Barnes. Kirby M. Carpenter, 6071 County Road, 600 Boonville, Mississippi, $90. How'd that get there? Miscellaneous paperwork that Chris McAllister testified to. First is a simple envelope that you get from a bank and you withdraw money. Where's that from? People's Bank, Ripley, Mississippi. Bands are used to band money together. People's Bank, People's Bank. You gotta ask yourself, where's the money? It's in his pocket. And the receipts. Here's a receipt from Panthers Den in Dumas, Mississippi. Kirby's MasterCard. And here are some receipts that Chris McAllister testified that he verified that they were from Kirby Carpenter's account. Now, what do these documents do in that box? Because Jeff Spence grabbed Kirby's satchel and left. Testimony is that this satchel contains business papers, documents, and cash. All that's found in the Chilhowie box. The confession. Caitlin Spence testified that in December of 2022, he had gone back to Mississippi on the 30th and delivered a package that he implied were narcotics, pills. Placed him in the shed, I believe, underneath the bucket. So here he's confessing to going back to Mississippi on the 30th. And then we had the waterfall conversation that Caitlin testified happened between April and June of 2023. After she's reading all these social media posts, she's gone through counseling, and she just comes out flat out and asks Jeff Spence, did you kill Kirby? What did he say? No, I didn't kill him. What are you talking about? The less you know, the better. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Down south, we would say that as don't thump a free melon. If you say anything, you'll lose, and no one can kill me. I did what I had to do. And Caitlin Spence testified that this was a confession. Now, Mr. Hill has made a lot of the purported enemies that Kirby had throughout his life. Drug dealers in Memphis, business transactions gone wrong. And all the people, Caitlin could have said, "Hey, look, he was dealing drugs with Joe Blow in Memphis. He killed him." Who did she point her finger at? The guy that confessed to her father, his own daughter. The shotgun. Carolyn Aguayo, Caitlin's sister, Jeff Spence's younger daughter. First grade teacher, wife, mother, has no reason, nothing to gain from her testimony. She doesn't want to be anywhere around Jeff. She doesn't want him to know where they live. She doesn't want him to know how many children she had. And he made the statement to her while watching TV that if he had to kill someone, he'd use a shotgun. Jeff knew it was easier to get away with using a shotgun because if you only fire one shot, the casing's not going to eject. Chris McAllister testified that it was a single shot from a shotgun. Now, significantly, again pursuant to a search warrant in December of 2023, Smith County law enforcement found a hidden, muddy, fully loaded shotgun under Jeff's bed. Pictures are in evidence. The shotgun was wrapped in a man's jacket. Muddy at the end of the barrel. Also important is the ammunition that was contained in the shotgun. He racked it 6 times, 6 shells ejected. I submit to you, the testimony was that the red shells are double-aught buckshot. Chris McAllister gave his opinion as a coroner that Kirby was shot with buckshot. Jeff's phone. Caitlin testified that she tried to call Jeff on November 30th of 2022. And she couldn't get it. And she asked him about this. And he said, "Oh, my battery was broken." All day? What was recovered in A1 storage was labeled a Faraday bag. You heard testimony what a Faraday bag is used for. Put your phone in there, nothing's coming in, nothing's going out. Easy way to hide your phone. Carolyn's testimony. What did she say about phones? She said that when Jeff had to cross state lines, he would give his phone to his wife so he couldn't be detected. You see a pattern here? Jeff's MO, modus operandi, how he gets things done. The shotgun. Kill with a shotgun, hidden underneath his bed. Why do you hide the shotgun underneath your bed? Wrapped in a jacket. Because you're trying to hide the murder weapon. Again, what the comment he made to Carol, if I was going to kill somebody, I'd kill him with a shotgun. The phone. Carolyn testified, yes, the phone was carried so they couldn't detect him going across state lines. His phone, he's gone dark for the day of 11/30/42. The security cameras. Now, you heard Carolyn testify that things had gone south with her parents. They had basically evicted him off their property. He came back to get his stuff out of the garage, and they watched him on the camera walk behind the shed, and then the cameras go blind. They go back to check it out. Cameras been cut. Cool. Why did he do that? Chris McAllister testified that Kirby Carpenter's security system, the cameras, had been disabled. Now, Mr. Hill said, oh, he didn't have access to the house. Yes, he did. Caitlin testified that she had told her parents where the spare key was located. So he didn't have to break into the house. There was no sign of forced entry because he didn't have to. He knew where the key was. He lived there for several months. The aggression. I wrote this down. During Carolyn's testimony, when they met at McDonald's to see if they could straighten things out, these are Carolyn's exact words. I saw an anger and a violence in his eyes that I had never seen before. I saw an anger and a violence in his eyes that I had never seen before. That's Carolyn's testimony. Someone has nothing to gain by being there. Caitlin testified at the waterfall, her father had never talked to her like that. He was angry. JDC, Jeff doesn't care. A text from November 5th of 2021, about a year before Kirby's murder. Jeff says, you hire the talent. The older I get, the less life in prison is a deterrent. Jeff doesn't care. The older I get, the less life in prison is a deterrent. That's a text in response to Caitlin's question, tired of a job, hey, what other work can I do? And he says, Assassin's Inc. That full text chain is entered into evidence. Kirby's house. Again, Jeff knew about the spare key, knew where it was. Jeff disabled the cameras. Because if he doesn't disable the cameras, all this is for naught. Jeff shot Kirby, dragged and tried to hide his body. Picture of Kirby's house in County 600 in Tippah County. Picture of the carport area. Looks like there'd been some kind of scuffle. And I say that because behind that white garbage can were found Kirby's house keys. Mud on Kirby's pants from being drugged. And that's where he ended up. Underneath the curtain, secured by a toolbox from a pickup truck. Now, Jeff's alibi. The court has instructed you that's the state's burden, and we accept that burden, to prove that Jeff Spence was in Mississippi. And I just went through the litany of evidence that shows that he was in Mississippi. So we've got that burden, but let's look at the alibi. The alibi is based on one text, supposedly from Karen Spence to Caitlin. One text. About to cook hamburgers. Dad worked really hard today. The hounds are on the porch. That message. That brings the obvious question. Where was Carrie? This is an unverified, unsworn, self-serving text message. Anybody can grab a phone, go into another room saying, hey, I'm having fun in Alaska. Why didn't Karen Spence come into this courtroom, be sworn in by the court reporter, sit down and testify under oath? I sent that text message. I was in Virginia when it was sent, and my husband, Jeff Spence, was with me. Where was she? I don't know where she was, but she wasn't here. Now, if you're accused of capital murder, and you're claiming you were somewhere else, and you see the number of just miscellaneous documents that are in all these bank boxes. It's almost like you hoarded receipts and things. Where are the receipts? Where's the receipt from the gas station where he filled up with gas in Saltville, Virginia on November 30th of 2022? Where's the receipt saying you bought a Coke and some naps?
Pardon me.
Why aren't there any receipts? Because he wasn't in Saltville. Why isn't there someone come in here and testify and say, yeah, Jeff and I were together on 11/30/22 in Saltville. We sat on the porch, had a Coke, because he wasn't in Saltville. This alibi, this unsworn, unverified, self-serving text message is not an alibi. What they're claiming to be an alibi.
You've used 28 minutes.
Thank you, but it's unsubstantiated. Why wasn't Karen here? Maybe she was tired of staying strong for the family, to continue covering up for Jeff. I don't know. All we know is she wasn't here. And you've got to ask yourself a question: how does a man with the financial troubles, with no continuing or employment whatsoever, how does he accumulate all this cash? If you look at the inventory sheets on the two bank boxes, he's got $62,000. That's just in the county cash. That doesn't count the money that was wrapped in aluminum foil when he was arrested on November 30th of 2023, 1 year to the day Kirby died. I believe that was about $10,000. He claims that he deals in gold, silver, and valuable coins. Is there any dealer that came in here and said, yeah, I'll show you? And finally, the three people, his immediate family, who should be the most important people to him, his two daughters, both testified against him. And his wife didn't testify. That's got to say something. Confessed to Caitlin, Carolyn, again, a first grade teacher, wife, mother, credible, no reason to come in here and lie. They broke ties with, I think she called them Bonnie and Clyde. Scared of her. Don't want him to know where she lives, where her family is, how many kids she has. Jeff Spence had the motive, that's greed. Jeff Spence had the opportunity in 19 hours. Jeff Spence took this man away from Maddie Jane, his mother, his sisters, Casey and Wendy, and most importantly, his 2 children, Towns and an elder. Jeff doesn't care. Prison's not a deterrent to him. A deterrent to what? A deterrent to murder. He's guilty. Find him guilty. Thank you.
You let me know if you want a break. You could have to, Mr. Hill has up to an hour to have his closing arguments. I don't know if we use all of it or not, but if you'd like to have a break now before we start that, we'll give you one. You think you need one? Nobody says yes, I'm gonna say no. All right? You may make your closing argument for the state. For the defense.
Okay, closing arguments on the defense side now. And be prepared for a long sit down. He does talk for an hour. He uses all his time, I believe.
If I don't speak loudly enough, let me know. Raise your hand. Just give me a sign. Let's review the timeline again because they're leaving a lot out. The Spence baby was born, the Carpenter baby, Noah, was born on July 23rd, 2022. From that day forward, Jeff Spence and Karen Spence, either both of them or one of them, was in Tippah County, Mississippi, helping Caitlin learn how to be a new mother, taking care of the baby. I think Karen Spence was here almost the entire time, the entire 4 months. And Jeff would be here, go back, take care of their place in Virginia, come back, go back, and did that entire 4-month period. On November the 29th, that's a Tuesday, they both returned to Virginia. And that's a 10-hour drive. Unless you drive going a lot faster than you should. That's 10 hours. They left about 3 p.m. That's an evidence. 3 p.m. on Tuesday the 29th. Arrived in Virginia in the wee hours of the morning. I'll come back to the timeline shortly. Jeff opened the bank box on the 2nd of December, I'm sorry. He opened another bank box on the 12th. The bank boxes that he opened on the 2nd and the 12th were visited repeatedly in 2023. The pictures that you see up here are items that were in these bank boxes a year later. They talk about the Chill Power bank box. What you see, the pictures wasn't on December the 2nd. It was in December of 2023, after search warrants were obtained a year later. Okay? The government claims, I told you when we started, the government claims things that they can't prove. They can't prove that Jeff Spence was in Mississippi on November the 30th, 2022. They can't prove that he was at Carpenter home. They can't prove that he did anything. There's no proof. No hard proof. There's nothing. No scientific evidence. Nobody saw him. He came all this way, did all this stuff, and nobody saw him. Now, on November the 30th, which is Wednesday, he was, in fact, with his wife at their home. And bear in mind now, they haven't been together in this home at that point for 4 months. She's been here in Mississippi. He's been coming and going. This is their first night, their first dinner as a couple in their own home in 4 months. Now, how do we know he's there? Well, 2 reasons. Number one, Karen and Caitlin have a text exchange. We all know what that is. We've got a cell phone. We write back and forth. I do it with my daughters tonight. You know, just casual checking in sorts of emails. And this is qualitative evidence. You don't have to have it notarized. You know how I came into possession of this? Just so you know how this whole system works. This is not something I found and I did find it, but it's not something I produced. This is a product of what's called discovery in a lawsuit, in a court case. Discovery, that means giving information. And you know where this information was obtained? By them. This came from them. This text message from between Caitlin and Karen came from the government. You know, when you get arrested, trust me, law enforcement types want yourself. They love yourself. They love to go through it and see what they can find. And that's what they did in this case. This is what they do in every case. They get your cell phone, they get a warrant to go into it, they go into it, and they heard the word dump it, they dump it, extract it, dump it. And this produces information. It produces information. And the information that they produce, they didn't know how to find it. When I get the phone dump, it's thousands. It's not just, oh, look here, I have to go dig it for this. I guess they thought I wouldn't find it. Caitlin and her mother, I'll have this with you in the back. Caitlin and her mother are having this casual evening checking in sort of exchange of, you know, what's for dinner? Really enjoy seeing Noah. She's such a doll, that sort of thing. And then Karen says, Dad and I are eating hamburgers in a few minutes. He just got up and took a nap. He worked hard today, inside and out. The hounds are back. I don't know what that's in reference to. Love you lots and lots. And then Caitlin writes back, LOL, good. I'm glad to hear that. I know you missed his hamburgers. Thank you so much, both of you, for helping out so much with Noah. You are the best grandparents. I don't have to have that notarized. This is qualitative evidence that they discovered in a cell phone search, and it tells you that Karen and Jeff, on November the 30th, are about to have dinner for the first time together in 4 months. First time together in their own home in 4 months. I'll help you understand how to read these things. If you look at some of the small print on this text message right here, you will see that it was sent on November the 30th, 2022 at about 8 p.m. I hope you pay attention. When I had Caitlin on the witness stand the other day, she didn't know I found this. I don't have to tell her what I found. They have to give me the phone number, but I don't have to tell her what I found. I can bring it up in court, which is what I did. And when she was sitting right there, and I started quizzing her about this, she was paying attention to how it worked. She was stunned. She didn't know what to say. And when I asked her, it's kind of difficult to kill Kirby Carpenter in Mississippi. on November 30th, 7 to 8 p.m. and be in Saltville, Virginia, having hamburger dinner at the same time. Isn't it, David? Isn't it difficult? You remember, all she could say was, all she could say. This is a quote. That's what it said. The only retort to my question, how do you explain killing somebody in Mississippi and being in Saltville, having dinner with your husband? Well, that's what it said. And that's what it said. She didn't need this waterfall confession. Waterfall confession never happened. This is, Caitlin Spence is up to her eyeballs in all this. I'm not sure you'll ever hear her. And she knew she was up to her eyeballs. She was the first one investigating. She was the first one to lawyer up. And what she did in April of this year is to get herself some relief. And you don't get relief from the government just because you want some relief from the government. You got to give them something. And so she makes up this story about a waterfall confession, wanted to hear it from her father. And she knew on November 30th, 2022, exactly where her father was, exactly where he was on November 30th, 2022. Because on that day, she was communicating with her mother about hamburger dinners they're fixing to have. And then Caitlin says, I know you've missed his hamburgers. She knew where her father was on November 30th, 2022. She didn't have to go ask him. Never happened. She's making it up. You know, what got Jeff Spence arrested initially was a statement from this guy named David Barnes. David Barnes was in trouble, just like David was in trouble. David Barnes was facing life imprisonment because he's a career criminal. And he went and gave a statement in 2023, a year after the time frame we're talking about with Kirby. He went and gave a statement to Chris McAllister about something he heard at the funeral. Well, Caitlin heard her say, I asked her about that. Something that Caitlin said to him at Kirby's funeral. And Caitlin says, that's a lie. It never happened. David Barnes is making it up. He's making up something that he can sell to the government to get him some relief. And it's gotten him something. He's not shipped off to prison yet. Interesting facts. That's what got Jeff Spence arrested. David Barnes' statement in November 23. Well, what David Barnes did in November 23, trying to get himself some relief from law enforcement, is exactly the same thing that Caitlin Spence did at the waterfall. She's making it, nothing happened at the waterfall. She's making it up. She's making it up to be as plausible as possible. She didn't have to go ask where her father was on that day, on that night, November 30th. She knew it was right there. She didn't know what we're talking about. Now, I hope you take note of David Barnes, who started this criminal case against Jeff Spence, was not brought into the court. They didn't bring it. And there's a reason. But he's not correct. And another reason they didn't bring him is because they have two competing witnesses. One saying one thing, no, they're a liar. Okay? When we first met each other last week, I told you to make sure that you make the government prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Make sure, make them prove that Jeff Spence was in Mississippi on November the 3rd at 7 p.m. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Following the timeline further, they want you to believe, I told you, that they concocted this theory that Jeff, Mississippi, Virginia, came back to Mississippi, did the deed, went back to Virginia, with no proof. There's no proof of any of that. None, zero. Is that beyond a reasonable doubt? And to follow up their preposterous, foolish, almost theory. They create this almost impossible allegation that we left Mississippi in the afternoon of the 29th, drove all the way to Virginia, turned around the next day and drove all the way back to Mississippi, and then turned around and went all the way back to Virginia. Now look, they're saying that he drove 30 hours over the course of 36 hours. If he left Mississippi 3 p.m. on the 29th, drove 10 hours, he got to Virginia in the wee hours of the morning. He turned around and drove back to Mississippi. That's another 10 hours. It would be from 3 p.m. on the 29th to 3 p.m. on the 30th would be 24 hours. Right? That's okay. 24 hours. Kirby is supposedly killed at 7. That's 4 more hours. And then we turn around and drove back. And that's another 10 hours or so. They're saying he drove 30 hours in 36 hours. 30 hours and 36 hours. That's over 2,000 hours. And what makes their theory of his conduct even less believable is that, you know, the evidence is that Kirby was a very independent-minded sort. Live life on his terms. If you don't like what I'm doing, heck with me. Go see me when you see me. I'm not coming home, I'm not coming home. And there is no expectation. Jeff is going from Mississippi, Virginia, back to Mississippi, and he is just coming back to Mississippi on the hunch that he might encounter this man. He's just, I'll just drive to Mississippi and see if I can run into him. Who in the world is going to do that? It makes no sense. It's foolish. So the notion that we did that, it's not plausible. It's not credible. The notion that we would even attempt, a man that age, I mean, he's no spring chicken. And I see some younger folks in this jury box, y'all might be able to pull that off. But not many of us, my age, it's not far behind. No. We have several items to talk about. Please bear in mind that a search warrant was had on the Jill Howie bank box on December 2nd, 2022. Mr. Miller has shown you all sorts of photographs. Those photographs are from December 2nd, 2022. Those photographs are from a whole year later. They don't have any proof as to what was open in that box on December 2nd. You just open the box. There hasn't been anything to it. It doesn't, certainly not what you saw on the screen. And then the next december 12th, 22. And it didn't have anything until June of 2020. Jill Howie box was visited 4 times in 23. All the stuff going in before the photographs were there. The software, I mean, yeah. The box opened on December 12th. Didn't have anything until June of 23. And certainly nothing was put in it that looked anything like a photograph that you saw on the screen. These photographs, trust me, are not contemporaneous with this time. They are different. They're not contemporaneous at all. When we bring a witness in Carolyn who hasn't even seen these people, in 7 to 8 years, hasn't even seen them. And they're going to use her testimony as some sort of convincing. She hadn't been around the entire thing for a year. And she's so full of hate and vengeance. I'm pretty sure they don't care. You know, she lost me when she told y'all that her mother's illnesses were a matter of convenience. That when her mother needs an excuse, she's got help for her. A matter of convenience. If that's the least mistake you can show your mother, I'll find her more to talk to you. There's your mother. They haven't proven anything in this case. They haven't proved our presence. They haven't proved our any conduct at Kirby's house. They haven't proved that we got to get in the house. They haven't proven that we committed a robbery. What we robbed? They haven't proved any robbery. They haven't proven anything. They haven't proven that there was any attempt to go into Kirby's safes. No damage, no attempt, nothing broken, no lock picked. The November the 30th, supposed that was a murder, wasn't Jeff Spence. I haven't figured out yet, I've been sitting here for a week, I haven't figured out yet what exactly they claim was taken on November the 30th, the day that Kirby was murdered. What do they claim was taken? Do they honestly want you to believe that all this stuff right here, all this stuff that Kirby's killer killed him at 7 o'clock and loaded all this up before Caitlin got home at 8:15? That's what they say. I don't believe that. That's what they say, using their timeline. All of this stuff? No, this is evidence of accumulated activity over the course of a long time. Remember, I had Mr. Johnson, the young investigator from Virginia, on the stand for a couple of hours, going through every item in that box, and that box, and that box, and that box. Every item. And every item in there, they showed some loose coins. There weren't any loose coins that I saw the other day. I asked him about loose coins. He said, they're not loose coins. They are commercial property. You'll get to see it. You can look at it yourself. Individual silver piece, silver dollar, whatever. And it's packaged in a hard plastic container that could be bought. I always say royalty because I have bought stuff there myself when I'm importing it. But you can buy it, you can buy it in Birmingham. Anywhere where there are products that make you sold. Mr. Johnson was asked, have you seen any evidence, Mr. Johnson, of when Jeff Spence came into possession of these items? Nothing. Couldn't say. Could have had them for 40 years. Could have had them for a year, 2 years. Who knows? They don't have any proof. They just, I told you the other day, they're just trying to squeeze whatever evidence they can and make it as punitive as possible against Jeff Spence. Trying to put, I think I use the analogy of trying to put a square peg into a round hole. They've been doing that for over 10 years. And they always want to catch it. They want to catch everything they do. It's a government tendency to make it as bad sounding, sinister sounding as possible for the accused. And the example that I'll use for you, if you look at they make out a term when they do evidence. They have a link. There's only a few secrets. And they accuse Jeff Spence of possessing on the day that he was arrested $8,200 counterfeit money. Well, that sounds pretty bad. $8,200 counterfeit money. He didn't have one red cent. He saw me have Mr. Johnson. Let's look in this bag. Let's open it up and see what's in here. Remember that? When we opened the bag with $8,200, and supposed counterfeit money. Well, it wasn't counterfeit money. That's play money. It says it, you look at it, it says it right on the document itself. Flip it over on the back side. It says, profit. Profit. It's a profit. Money, movements and stuff. Profit. It's a profit. That's simple about that bit. It's not counterfeit money. Most of it would even try to pass it. What's left will take it. It's not right. If Kirby supposedly, excuse me, if Jeff supposedly brought fuels that Caitlin Spence brought, why would they never find it? Didn't happen. Caitlin's just making stuff up to protect herself. Caitlin's making stuff up to shift the blame. She's making stuff up to earn her freedom. She's free. She's happy. She is a free person with her daughter. They say I blame her. I might have done it myself, but that doesn't mean she gets to pass it off to somebody else, which is why she's not her. I think you need to bear in mind how much animosity Kirby had going on at the time, how much animosity he has generated over the course of his young life. How many people wanted to do him harm? How many people threatened to shoot him in the face? Not just shoot him in the face. How many people wanted to drag him out to the streets and beat him to death in the city of Richmond, where nothing would happen to him, is what he said. How many people got mad at him over manipulating business deals? How many people got mad and said that's the kind of money he killed over? All sorts of questions. Somebody killed Kirby Carpenter. Who was it? Have they proved to you beyond a reasonable doubt that it's Judge Gibbs? No, they don't have any proof at all. Besides, I just showed you. On November 30th, at the time he supposedly was in Mississippi to do this deed, he was at home in Virginia with his wife, and she is telling the daughter that, and daughter knew it, and she went to talk to her, or claimed she went to talk to her husband, or her father. And what year was it? 23 or 24? 23. April of 23, June of 23. No, it just didn't happen. The government wants to direct your attention to other specific facts, like the shotgun found in a house in Virginia. What's so big about that? There's no connection. There's no evidence at all connecting that gun to Mississippi. None, zero. It's just another example of trying to make the evidence. Let's see if we can make it. How many people own a shotgun? I want to buy one. So there's nothing wrong with owning a shotgun. Nothing wrong with putting it wherever you're going to put it, back in whatever you're going to
We approach her.
Brief sidebar in the middle of a sentencing. Okay.
told you that you should pay particular attention to Caitlin Spence and her effort to get out of trouble and whatever she said about her father, and analyze these facts carefully as to her. Kirby was a drug dealer, and she was right there. Okay. Kirby sold methamphetamine, she was right there. Kirby sold pills, she was right there. Drug dealer, trust me. 50-year lawyer. There's a lot of violence associated with drug dealing. And she was right there. You know, going to Virginia, driving back to Virginia. That's a lot to believe when you got this woman right there in the house. You got this woman right there in the house. And not only do you have her right there in the house with you, but they had a history that wasn't always flowers. It wasn't always positive. She told you, other people told you, Kirby was a difficult man. He had a temper. He had a tendency to violence if you didn't agree with the way he wanted to live. Kirby was emotionally abusive to her. When I say emotionally abusive, I'll come on if I want to, but if I don't want to, I'm not going to. And if you say anything, I'm liable to give you a black eye. And he did. I don't believe Caitlin was happy in that relationship, and I think she's glad it's over. And one of the things that I found interesting that I didn't even know until this case was being heard. Mr. McAllister was on the witness stand, and he wanted to play the 911 tape. And you heard after the dispatch answers the phone, answers the 911 call, then we have a very emotional, crying, upset young woman. And Chris suggested to you that that was an act. And I suggest to you that it was an act for her to cover her own interest here. Remember what Chris said? A 911 call is recorded. It's recorded before it's answered. And when that 911 call was made, Caitlin wasn't crying before the phone was answered. She wasn't upset before the phone was answered. She was upset when she acted upset when the dispatch said, "Hello, what's your emergency?" That's when the crime started, in that space of time between making the call and it being answered. There was nothing. Caitlin was manipulating the situation. Caitlin was trying to deflect attention away from herself, just like she's done with this supposed waterfall story. She didn't know water in view of her discussions with her mother on the night of November 30th, 2022. Dad and I are fixing to have a hamburger at the same time that Kirby supposedly being killed. Just doesn't watch. Doesn't hold water. You know, Chris McAllister is a long time Tippah County coroner and a long time Tippah County investigator. I've known him a long time. He usually shoots straight with me. And I think he shot straight some arrows, but basically in this case. I don't recall anything from his investigation, what he did, that in any way connects Jeff Spence to here, to this case, to this work on November 30th, 2022. Chris did all this investigation, and I can't think of a single fact that he could testify to that points the finger at us. There's no connection between cameras. There's no connection. There's no proof of any connection between surveillance cameras. There's no proof of any connection concerning any sync module. There's no proof of any connection between any attempts to steal money from inside safe. There's no proof of any connection between any supposed hard evidence, scientific evidence, forensic evidence. All we've got here is theory and everything they can do to make whatever they find fit that theory. Of course, Chris did make some mistakes. I mean, there's no fingerprints. There's no fingerprints off of Kirby's door to his truck. If somebody's going into that truck, you know, it self-locks. Anybody going into that truck, they have to open the door. No fingerprints on the supposed toolbox outside. Nothing hard as evidence that you would normally see in a criminal case. Connecting Jeff Spence to this place at that time. That day, that time, nothing. Caitlin, on the other hand, had a lot to protect. She claims that she, and I find it interesting, see if you can help me out here. Kirby is supposedly killed around 7 p.m. on Wednesday, November 30th. And somebody does what they do to him. That's not the sort of conduct that you would expect of somebody who would be in a hurry if he has driven all the way from Mississippi to Virginia back to Mississippi, and he's going to kill him. He's going to steal all this stuff, and he's going to go to the trouble to get him around by the metal coverall, put him underneath the toolbox. That's not somebody who has driven 2,000 miles, has driven all these hours in a very short period of time. That's somebody more local, somebody who's got time. Somebody like Caitlin Spence, and whoever she might have as a good help. She's not in it because she's living there at the time. She's not living, I mean, she's not in a hurry to leave. Whoever kills Kirby at 7 o'clock, 7:15, going to steal all this stuff, steal stuff out of supposed satchel that we've never seen. He's not going to be hanging. If they were, wouldn't she see him when she gets there a little afternoon from Boone? Yes, of course she would. So the simple facts of how this supposedly is happening does not support Jeff Spence. It more likely supports Caitlin Spence and whoever she had as friends. And she called some of the names of her friends. I'm not going to call them again. But y'all heard. She's protecting herself and somebody else. And she's sacrificing her father in the process. There he is. Well, I'm not naming it. Don't want to waste time. Kirby Carpenter had a habit or practice in the church, a practice of he owes me money, so he writes me a check. And I say, can you cash this? I give him the check back, and he cashes it for me. I put the cash in my pocket, and off I go. That check handed back to him that he had written becomes a receipt. It's like a receipt. And that check to David Barnes was dated April 21st, 2022. It's here from the book. All that check proves is this, that at some point after April 21st, 2022, at some point, Kirby and Jeff did business. Jeff was there a lot. After August, he was there almost all the time. They did business together. And they had done business before then. But after that check, and why it comes into Jeff's possession is because inadvertently It was put into a bag or a box where Kirby was delivering stuff to Jeff. Jeff had bought some of the stuff that you see over here. That's all. And I do this together. You know, we've heard from Caitlin, we heard from Christopher Johnson that the inside of Kirby's house was basically mixed. It was full of papers and clutter. And the fact that we end up with papers and clutter in some of Jeff's possessions in the bank boxes, it's nothing more than inadvertently grabbing something and sticking it because of all of that. That's all it means. And anything yeah. There is no connection between anything that the government claims that we did that they have proven beyond a reasonable doubt. All right. And remember, there were plenty of people who wanted to do Kirby. Ray Palmer, David Hancock. Remember the guy who, Adam Gates, chased him down in Google, assaulted him in a parking lot with a gun. Memphis, Biker, Nashville, Diamond guy. All had reason to want Kirby gone. Drug dealing in and of itself. This is not to raise your eyebrows. So the government tries to they tried to lend credibility to Caitlin's supposed waterfall confession, as he calls it. And I just don't. I have a two-layered response to that supposed waterfall happening. The first layer is it never happened because she knew where he was. The second layer is assuming that it did happen. What she said is not nearly as telling as they want it to sound like. It didn't happen. But you know, I have two daughters, and I can imagine if either one of my daughters was living life with Caitlin's reality. I could end up saying something very similar to it myself. If I had a daughter who was living with a drug dealer, involved in drug dealing. If I had a daughter who was living with a man who had people engaging in high-speed chases, Adam Gates, for example, chasing my significant other down, assaulting him with a gun. I had a daughter who was living with a man who was emotionally abusive, wasn't committed to the relationship, show up when he gets good and ready. If I had a daughter who was married to a man, or living with a man who had propensity to smack you, if you had anything to say, leave marks on you, black eyes, bruises. If I had a daughter who was living that reality, I could very well see myself saying, look, honey, you got your daughter. You got a lot to do. You're out of a bad situation. You're no longer living with people who are doing what this guy was doing to you, what he was doing to make a living, what he was doing to make money. You're exposed to high misconduct. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Move on with your life. I can hear myself saying that. Sure as heck. And I think a father that would say that to a daughter would be a good father. It doesn't mean what Caitlin did, but it never happened because Caitlin knew exactly where her father was on November the 30th. 2020. He was at home with mom. First time they had together a dinner at their own home in 4 months. Spent the day working. Took a nap, cooked a hamburger. You'll see it right here. This is digital proof. Your cell phone, you know, that little guy follows you around. And he's recording evidence when you don't think it's recording. He follows you around, recording evidence. And to the extent that Caitlin says, or they want to make out like Caitlin says she can't get in touch with her father on November 30th. Battery's broken. Whatever. This little guy's not to be denied. And I don't, if that were in fact the case, let me tell you what happens. Let's assume that my battery's broken. And you can't call me. That's my phone's not working. It's not answering. Or let's assume that, like I do every Friday night, I turn the dead everything on. It's off. Well, it's off only to an extent. Because if this little guy is not really ever on, you're calling me and my battery's broken, and you leave me a message, and you call me again and leave me a message. Those messages don't go into outer space. When this phone is powered back up with a battery, or I turn it back on, you know what happens to those messages? You got 100. They come flooding in. They come flooding in. They're not going. They come flooding in. And if Kate called today on November 30th, now we should believe there's something sinister going on because I couldn't get in touch with him. If you left a message, it comes through when the phone is battered up or turned back on. And we don't have any such evidence because it didn't happen. She's just trying to bolster her claim. They're trying to bolster their evidence. They're trying to make stuff better. You have 4 minutes. That's all? Thank you. Exhibit 50. Exhibit 50. This is proof. November 30, 2022, at 8 p.m. And this is nothing more than foolishness. Foolishness, playfulness, foolishness between a parent and a daughter. That's all it is. There is no assassin, never will be. There is no business that they're in together. This is just foolishness. And don't be misunderstood. You've got all the returns, the entry log, one bank box, another bank box. Just bear in mind that those boxes were visited. This is 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10 times in 1 year. This one's 4, another one's 7. And what they're showing from these pictures are after all these visits, the stuff that's being put in. Those pictures aren't contemporaneous with Kirby's death. The pictures are a year later, over a year later. Search for this guy. Don't be missing it. Sit down and talk. Start talking about this case. Remind each other. When you leave here, you should feel good about the decision you made. If you don't know who Kirby's killer is, and we don't, if you're not sure, then your vote's not guilty. Because I don't have to prove anything, even though I have to. I don't have to. He doesn't have to. That's not the way the game is played. That's not the way the system works. The government claims they have to prove everything. Make them do it. Thank you so much. I'm done.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, let's just take a little break. Go down there just a while. Make it pretty.
Y'all like how he ended? I'm done. That was the best ending I think I have ever seen.
I'm done.
I'm done.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Okay.
jury, let's
Just wanted to
just
verify.
take a little break. Go down there just a while. Make it pretty quick. And the state be ready for close anyway. All right. Court being recessed until about 15 minutes. 10 to 15.
Okay, so we're going to move on to state rebuttal closing. And let's see, it will last, looks like about 25 minutes or so. I know, it is so unprofessional, Cindy, so unprofessional.
Now, you
I'm
were doing
done.
that, didn't you? All right. Everybody good on the jury? You may make your final close for the state.
Thank you, Honor. At the break, I was talking to Carson Moore back there. He's a ADA with our office. We were talking about, how many times have we tried a case where alibi was claimed as a defense and never heard from the alibi? And in all my years, since the year 2000, in all of his years, zero. Where's Karen? Where is she? And that's really important too, because I've heard David Hill up here, and there are some things I agree with about Chris McAllister. I don't know where he is. He should be in here. Anyway, Chris McAllister is a good investigator. And what he did is investigate this case. And he followed the leads, and everything that you have before you is because of his hard work. And he, according to David Hill, he's a straight up guy. And that's what he did. He followed the leads, and that's why you have this evidence here. And we'll get into that. The first thing that I want to disagree with David Hill about is when they want to drag Kirby Carpenter through the mud even greater today, and in this case, than they did when they dragged his dead body and put a curtain over it and then placed a toolbox on it. They drug him through the mud. Guess what? When Enola was born, Jeff Spence and Karen Spence were there for 4 months. In October, you heard testimony that they all went up to Pennsylvania to meet the family up there. Does that sound like a drug dealer, that they would want him to go and meet the family up there? Does that sound like somebody that was abusive? And he said he was a good father. Anyway, be thinking about those things. We'll come back to them. Now, I want to disagree with the fact that he called Jeff Spence a good father. This case is a story as old as time itself. It's about the lust for gold and what somebody will do for that gold. And I submit to you that when that text, and you'll take it back there, you'll be able to see it. A year before this happened, when Jeff Spence, they're talking, group text with Karen, Jeff, and Caitlin, and they say, hey, what am I going to do, about work? I want to start a business. Jeff Spence likes the fuse. He likes the fuse and says, Assassin's Inc. She says, I don't think I could do that. And he said, you hire the talent. Now, that may be fun and games, but you've got to take that into context of his other daughter, Carolyn, who he said was filled with hate. Do you believe that? Do you believe Carolyn, his other daughter, came up here and took the stand and testified to you motivated by hate? She told you that she lived in fear of her father, Jeff Spence, and what he would do to her family and her husband. That moment in the McDonald's when they met, and she said, I saw an aggressive side of my father that I had never seen before, is important because it corroborates what Caitlin said, and that shift. The lust for gold and what people will do. And I submit to you that, David Hill says he has 2 daughters, I have 3. And there's I don't want to get too philosophical, but, your daughters are a joy in their youth, and they are your companions in your old age. And what have you heard here? You've heard some main character delusion by Jeff Spence that perverted that whole idea and saw his 2 daughters as opportunities, a scheme. You heard Carolyn talk about him making notes on these shows, schemes, and different opportunities. And David Hill, you talk about discovery. We downloaded Jeff's phone. We gave it to him, all the contents. We had witnesses up here that could testify about all the contents of his phone. If they would have asked him about beehives, you would see photos of beehives and paraphernalia with beehives. You'd see dogs, where he raised dogs. You'd see junk, consistent with Carolyn's testimony. She had to move 3 tons of it out of her yard. You would see all that. He could have asked him. You heard Carolyn say that they want you to believe that he had a lifelong interest in silver and gold and coins. If he would have asked him about what was on Jeff Spence's phone that was hoarded, there'd be nothing. No gold, no silver. You'd see junk cars. You'd see junk. You'd see washers and dryers and old junkers with no coins, no gold. If he was a lifelong dealer in silver and gold, why not bring receipts? Why not bring the people that he dealt with? You didn't see that. Do you buy it? I don't. I believe all this that you see, all the valuables that are here, that have been kept in the bank vault during the proceeding of this trial because of its worth, has nothing to do with Jeff Spence, who declared bankruptcy, moved in with Carolyn. They bought him a car, gave him a car, tried to get him on his feet. He saw him as an opportunity. Do you believe that she testified out of hate? Or do you believe that she was testifying out of fear? She doesn't want her whereabouts to be known because of Jeff Spence. That text, Assassins, Inc., lit a fuse. And then he wants to talk about the waterfall conversation between Caitlin and Jeff. Well, June 3rd, 2023, S48, Caitlin sends, and this is in and around the time she testified that that waterfall conversation took place in April. And this was sent June 3rd. Thank you, Daddy-O, for making it where I can just take care of our Noah. June 3rd of 2023. She has been sleepy, investigating, laughing, snuggling, nursing, lay with mommy, baby since she left. We're on our second nap. Having the ability to allow her to be all those things on her schedule is just so awesome. This is the bookend to when he lit the fuse a year before with Assassins, Inc., hiring the talent. And you know what he said in response to that? I mean, does this sound like, to me, this is an admission. It's not a normal response from a father who David Hill says is a good father, and we'll get into that too. No more important use for my life or anyone's. Isn't that weird? Isn't that strange? It only makes sense in the context of the fact that we know that he drug Kirby Carpenter's dead body through the mud. There's an old lecture by Russell Conwell called Acres of Diamonds. I don't know if any of y'all have ever heard that, but it's about this farmer in Persia that sells his little farm and goes searching the world for treasure. And what he doesn't realize is that his little farm was where all the diamonds were all along now. Why is that relevant here? Because I think it's profoundly, critically important for you to understand that as it relates to him being a good father, his only 2 children came in here and testified against him. Both of them. And that goes back to his main character delusion, and that delusion and his schemes poisoning their families. He did it with Carolyn, and he was doing it again with Caitlin. And he was successful with Caitlin. You know, if he would have realized that his daughters in and of themselves were his crown jewels, we wouldn't be here today. If he had spent all his schemes and efforts and energy into giving them positive examples and advice, we would not be here today, but he didn't. He saw them as opportunities, exploited it, and poisoned it. And today, ladies and gentlemen, you are the antidote. I am neither foolish nor confused about David Barnes. What we had, what you heard from Chris McAllister, was that he believed that they were all in on it together and they were all charged. Jeff, Carolyn, and Karen, all charged together with the murder of Kirby Carpenter, right? Now, there's one thing that we know from the proof, and that is Caitlin could not have pulled the trigger. Could not have pulled the trigger. We had surveillance of her at the Walmart parking lot shortly after she texted Kirby, "When are you going to be home?" And that was at 6:37. And he arrived, and when she came home, his truck was there, no Kirby. And we already know his body was hidden under the curtains and under the toolbox. If you were to ask Chris McAllister or Maddie Jane or Mindy or Casey whether they were all in on it together, they would say yes. And there are 10 or 11 facts that we can point to that would show that. The Assassins Inc. group text, Caitlin identifying when Kirby was going to be home, Caitlin being at Walmart for 45 minutes on camera, her alibi, Jeff's phone radio silence all day long on 11:30. Now, David Hill wants to talk to you about how difficult that would be for a man of his age to make that trip. You know, on 11:29, going back to Saltville, 8-9 hour trip, rest. The next day is November 30th. He could drive back to Ripley, 8-9 hours, be there between 6:37 and 8:15, you know, probably 7:15, that time frame. We know that if you remember on Fort Ire, I thought it was a peculiar question that was asked of the panel. You know, how many of you are truck drivers? Well, I don't think any of the truck drivers made it on the jury. But I don't think that drive is as difficult as he wants you to believe. And then I think you can add, he made a big deal about us giving this to him on discovery. You know, where's the beef? Where's Karen? Where's the hamburger? You know, there was something really interesting that she said in there. Dad and I are eating hamburgers in a few minutes. He just got up from a good nap. He worked hard today, inside and out. The hound dogs are back on the porch now. And if you remember, he was reading that to you, and he just said, I don't know what that means. Well, Maddie Jane knows what that means, and some of you understand know what that means. That means the hunt is over. Dogs are on the porch.
Objection. Maddie Jane hasn't testified about anything. Maddie Jane hasn't testified about anything, and I object to him quoting what Maddie Jane said or what it said. It's not in evidence.
In the testimony.
Well, that's an old expression. Some of you may know what it means too. It's an old expression. Group text, well, actually just between Karen and Caitlin, because as you know, looking in the A1 storage, this man's phone wasn't working that day. Faraday bag. Number 6, Caitlin telling cops a list of people that could have ill will toward Kirby. That was significant to Chris McAllister. That's where all that, who could have done it? It took a year before search warrants were issued. Chris McAllister was working this case doggedly during that whole period of time. There was just nothing there. Nothing led back to any of those people. Complete access to the home. You heard Carolyn's testimony about what Jeff Spence did to their surveillance system in Virginia. He cut the wires, stole the tools, good father. Are you kidding me? They had another camera up there that caught him in the act, caught him cutting through the fence where they had tried to secure it because they knew he'd come back and trespass and start taking stuff. This was the controller. They had been there for 4 months. This was on the mantle on the TV, if you remember. And Maddie Jane, you heard, called Chris McAllister and said, this was behind a bunch of boxes, just thrown off into the back box. That was the controller of that surveillance system. hiding Kirby's body, Caitlin not finding it over that period of time, that was significant to Chris McAllister as well. You know, it gives just time and distance before you can begin the investigation, first 48, whatever you want to call it. It gave them a head start, gave him the ability to get back to Virginia. And you know what happened when he went back to Virginia? They want to make light of it, but man, that Sheila Howie opening of lockbox. I mean, he's got lockboxes all over the place. And on December the 2nd, almost 2 hours before Maddie Jane's on the phone with Caitlin saying, "Where is Kirby? Nobody's been able to get in touch with him." 2 hours before that phone call to 911, we'll get into that. Jeff Spence is opening a lockbox, 11:40 Virginia time, 12/2/22. And you know what was in that box? A bunch of cash, a bunch of valuables, and then Kirby stuff. Now, this is important. It was important to Chris McAllister. It's important to me. It should be important to you because nobody disputes that Kirby carried that bag around with him everywhere. It had his business that he was doing that day. Wherever he was going, whatever he was doing, it was in that.
Mr. Creedmoor is
Come
part of
talk
the
to me,
facts.
please.
not
You
in
see
the
the look?
Talk to me up here.
Stop. Do y'all see the look on his face when the lawyer interrupted? The look.
Hey, wherever he was going, whatever he was doing, it was in that.
Look at the face.
Mr. Creedmoor is part of the
Talk to me,
facts,
please.
not in the evidence.
Talk to me up here. Talk to me up here.
And the judge says, "Talk to me up here. Talk to me up here." Oh, my stars. That's funny.
Be in his bag. There's no legitimate explanation for why this would be this man's lockbox. No value to him at all, but it is a value to us. And these are receipts. And you can look at the receipt where Kirby would withdraw money from the bank, and it's the same account number as this check. It's Kirby's. You can compare them. It's open. You can open this and look at it. Also in here, there are some empty bands of cash. Empty. The irony is not lost on me that it's Kirby's money that actually paid for the defense.
That's highly improper, Judge, and I object to it.
Y'all come here.
Judge says, "Y'all come here. Y'all come here." He's probably telling him, "Get on with your story and get done. I'm ready to go eat some lunch so I can go duck fishing in the morning because this trial's going to be over." I don't know. What he just tell him, y'all get on with it. Quit interrupting him. Let him get
I
done.
meant no offense to Mr. Hill. I think there was money in that account. It goes back to bands that were from the People's Bank in Ripley. There's no legitimate reason for Jeff Spence to have those empty bands in his lockbox. And I submit to you that you can come to a legitimate conclusion, and that is that the contents of his bag on December the 2nd, Kirby Carpenter's bag, were dumped in that lockbox. Also, and that's right. Also, you've heard testimony, and you can come to this conclusion too, legitimately, that he carried around a .22 Magnum because of what he was involved in, what he did, and what he protected. And he had on his person 22 Magnum rounds. There was no gun. That is property of Kirby Carpenter that was never found, and I submit to you it's robbery. Whoever killed him, and we know it was Jeff Spence, took that gun and took that bag. And on December the 2nd, when he was opening that bag, he knew that he was going to get a call, that they were going to come back, and that crime was going to be a continuing crime. And you heard testimony from Chris McAllister that during that period when they came back, that Sunday, when they were back, in his Cadillac, they were putting silver coins in the back of that Cadillac. How about that? How about that? Maddie Jane's son killed, Casey's brother, Wendy's brother killed. And what's on his mind? What's he doing? He's taking bags of silver that he had nothing to do with in acquiring and getting and obtaining and working hard and putting it in the back of his Cadillac. Number 9, Caitlin happening to find Kirby at the moment Maddie Jane was coming over because no one could contact her. They were
Christine, you are right about this. The judge did another trial recently, and the trial ended up as a mistrial, which we will see how this one ends here shortly.
They were worried about him, trying to get him. And Caitlin was on the phone, if you remember the testimony about going up to the deer stand and coming back, on the phone with Maddie Jane. She knew something was wrong. I'm coming over. And Caitlin, instead of saying, come over, says, I found him. That was a significant part of the investigation to Chris McAllister. The delayed emotion on the 911 tape was significant to Chris McAllister. Yeah, you know, it records. Y'all keep that in mind when you call 911. It's recording as soon as you dial it. And then the dispatcher answers and she begins to wail. I'm not foolish and I'm not confused about that. The other thing that is in the Saltville branch lockbox are these wheels. These wheels were in that lockbox. They're in evidence. You can look at it. You know, whether they're working together, who lit the fuse. You can see in Jeff's wheel, these were done in December of 2022. You know, and I submit to you that this is a consolidation or consummation of agreement. And I think that would be what Chris McAllister would say. You know, these are the words in Caitlin's will. This life has been a beautiful one. Noah, you are your mother's savage daughter. Under that was significant to the investigation. And all these 10, 11 things suggest they're acting together. And makes you wonder, you know, where Karen is. Alibi. That was what he told you from the beginning. Opening statements. Where's Karen? But a year after Kirby's death, around a year after Kirby's death, David Barnes gets arrested for stealing well, that's an exaggeration, but he stole a lot, broke into a lot of businesses in multiple counties. Ends up arrested in Union County. And, you know, I can tell you what they didn't find. They didn't find all this. If he had all this, he wouldn't have been breaking into all those businesses. But what he did say was about a conversation that Jeff was there, Caitlin was there, and he gave Chris McAllister enough for an arrest warrant. So the Mississippi boys had enough for an arrest warrant, and the Virginia boys had enough for a search warrant. And that is what led to the check, the receipts, no legitimate reason for him to have. And it led to a gun, 12-gauge shotgun in his house. You got a picture of it right here. Buckshot. I mean, at what point do the coincidences and the circumstances taken all together make it beyond any doubt? And wrapped up and dirt on him. Not only did they drag him through the mud on November 30th, not only did they drag him through the mud today, it was wrapped, put under the bed. Yeah. And I submit to you, I mean, we've all
Yeah, 2 minutes.
heard David Barnes testify. He's burned up on drugs. He's got criminal history that's embarrassing long. Would you find that compelling? Caitlin Spence was given an opportunity. She was given an opportunity to do the right thing. She did it. She took it. She had a conversation with her daddy. You can corroborate that with that text where he says, nothing better for my life or anyone's. That is confirmation that that conversation took place. And that brings us here. The judge has said, you have to use your common sense and sound honest judgment. I'm looking at 500, 600, 700 years of experience collectively among all of you. Together, you'll go back there, you'll find, whoever your foreman is, you'll use that. I think that's what it means. Your life experiences, dealing with family, understanding, what it took for daughters to come up here and take a stand against their own father. And not only that, talk about a good father. What struck me was that David Hill would ask for a court's indulgence. He would go over there and get advice from Jeff Spence on how he can attack them and attack their testimony. And I submit to you that Kirby Carpenter, is well known. He had a silver and gold shop across from the courthouse. Oftentimes, when he tried a case in Tippah County, I'd go over there while the jury was deliberating, and I'd look at his guitars. I'm a guitar player. He had a set of country gentlemen Gretsch guitars, and he had a passion for these things. And Chris McAllister, he didn't have anything on his radar about him being some great drug dealer. He testified to that. And I submit to you that those 4 months, Karen Spence didn't come up here and tell you that she witnessed any kind of domestic abuse. It was full of joy for the birth of Noah. And he will never be able to experience the joy of her being young, nor will he have her companionship in old age. I submit to you that we've given you everything that Chris McAllister and the Virginia boys did, and that's proof enough. The totality of the circumstances, I'm neither foolish, I'm practical. Caitlin did the right thing. And she had that conversation with her daddy, knowing that he had killed Kirby Carpenter. And she came in here and told you about it. She raised her right hand and submitted herself to the cross-examination, and Karen did not. She did not come in here and raise her hand because she knew there was a lie. There was a lie, and she did not understand cross-examination or your scrutiny. That's not who the bell tolls for. It tolls for the don't let him get away with murder. Thank you, Judge.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, we have.
He said that bells toll. Oh, that was perfect timing for the bells. I know the judge is on the phone. That's what I was like. Please tell me he's watching the time on his phone, because that's all he was doing was sitting there staring at his phone. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, so with that, well, the jury was out for 3 hours and 2 minutes. Yes, and these bell tolls are going to haunt us. So they were out for 3 hours and 2 minutes. And so I'm going to switch tabs because we're going to go over this tab. This was the first jury note that came in.
He needs to be here anyway. I didn't realize he was here. Thank you.
It's the same with you.
All right, so just under 3 hours, this jury comes back saying that they cannot reach a verdict. You heard the judge there. We don't know the number yet. And then I didn't hear a response from the attorneys as to what.
So, this was the first.
2005, but he doing his best anyway. He was 20 years off, and 2:55 p.m. I intend to bring the jury back in. I'm not going to let them off. I'm not letting them off this early. I will. Do y'all wish for me to ask the jury what their numerical divide is? I'm going to tell you now, whatever it is, whether it be 6 to 6 or 11 to 1, I'm going to send them back for more. But if y'all want me to ask them what the numerical divide is, I will. But either way, we've got too much time and energy invested in this case to stop the deliberations this quickly anyway. Do y'all wish for me to? I intend to. Does anybody have any problem with me giving the sharpening instruction at this time?
I see it again. I haven't had to deal with this.
That's the instruction that's normally given when they claim to be.
Okay, so the sharpen instruction that he's talking about is also what we call the Allen instruction generally. So they come back in and he gives them this instruction, and then we're going to flip over and we're going to watch the last of it.
Coming out of Mississippi in the plotting parents murder trial of Jeffrey Spence. The clock has stopped, as you notice, at 4 hours and 24 minutes. And our understanding is that the jury has come back after coming back earlier, saying they were deadlocked at 6-6. They've come back again, saying that they are still deadlocked.
I'm not surprised, Michael. So that first time they came back was right before 3 hours. Now they're at almost 4.5 hours. So an hour and a half later, they're still deadlocked. I think when we learned the split, 6-6, and the judge made clear, I don't want to know who's voting for what, came back 6-6. I thought that could be a tough one to get a unanimous jury.
Yeah, I agree. But I also agreed with his point that 3 hours wasn't enough.
Agree.
Right? 3 hours wasn't enough. They spent a lot of time on this trial, wanted them to go back. He gave them what they call in Mississippi a sharpen instruction, which is to go back and continue to try to work through this and get some sort of conclusion to this trial. But it looks like after another hour and a half, they were unable to do that.
That's right. The sharpen instruction, just another name for what some call an Allen charge. Sometimes it's the dynamite charge. And I have to tell you, I don't think I've ever seen a trial, Michael, where the jury is told that at least once they got to go back and keep trying.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? They didn't want to know how the split was. So had it been 11-1, they didn't want to know which way. But 6-6 is right in the middle. Yeah. So it's like you got 6-4, 6 against. You know where they stand. And I think you and I agreed when he sent them back, it was going to be a difficult thing to turn 6 people one way or the other.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I also think that to your point, you and I have talked about, there is some reasonable doubt here. Like I do understand, and that just assume
gave her some central stage Eastern.
Let's get back to him talking to the jury. Come on, Court TV. While we appreciate you, you have too many commercials.
All right, folks, we want to take you back now to Mississippi for that breaking news in the plotting parents murder trial. So let's get back into court.
All right, I've received another note from the jury indicating that y'all have still not been able to reach a unanimous decision. I caution you again, don't tell me which side, for lack of better words, winning. What's the score? Has the score changed any? No. Score has not changed any? Do you feel that, and I'm sort of directing this to all of you are, not just Mr. Williams, but do you think that further deliberations, do you think any chance of any further deliberations moving the needle anywhere? Do you think further deliberations will be any use or not? Don't be bashful. Speak out, shake your head, whatever you think anyway.
Yep. So with that, we get to do this. And I believe we're going to have to add one to that list.
I see some of you shaking your head no. I see a lot of you shaking your head no. All right. Y'all just bear with me one just a second. Well, I'm going to let y'all go. I'm not going to send you back if the needle hadn't moved any, and you don't think there's any chance of it. If it was a 10-2 vote, 11-1, 9-3, even maybe stuff. 6-6 is as far apart as you can get anyway. And I want to say I appreciate y'all service. We all knew going in this was going to be a tough case. It's going to take some of your time, and it's going to be a difficult case. I appreciate your service. You all be free to go. If you need an excuse for work or anything, you'll stop down in Ms. Nowicki's office and see if they'll give you an excuse. If you want to talk to anyone about your jury service, you're free to do so. If you don't want to talk to anyone about your jury service, tell them you don't want to talk about it. I don't have any reason to think they would persist in asking questions, but if they do, you get in touch with me or one of these court officials, and we will put a stop to it, okay? I don't have any reason to expect anyway to have any repercussions for your jury service whatsoever. But thank you. If you need any work excuse or anything, stop off at Ms. Nowicki's office, and y'all go. Thank you for your service, and y'all have a good evening, okay?
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. I heard there was a meltdown in the gallery, and I don't want to put that out there. I know that can be a very emotional time for family members and stuff. And we need to respect that. I do understand that he is still being held. He is not being released. So we will see where they go, if they have a retrial or what, if the state can come up with more evidence. So with that, y'all, I am very, very tired. I've had a very long day taking mom to the doctor and stuff. So I am going to piece rubber out really early tonight. So I want you all to have a great rest of your night. Thank you for being here with me. As always, you are loved, you're important, you're special. Don't ever forget that. Till tomorrow, we're going to go over the Jose Escalera sentencing tomorrow. That's my plans for tomorrow. So with that, I will see y'all tomorrow. Peace. Rubber out. Y'all have a great rest of your night.